Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sophie, and I am one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. Now, I am not alone in the studio today. I'm joined by my friend Ty, who is controlling all the cool stuff you see going on behind me. Now, also, something that's also really cool about his job is that he is answering our text line. So, we want you to get engaged with us this morning. We're going to be asking for observations. If you have any questions that you would like to share with us, you are more than welcome to text us at 562-286-1838. And that is if you are watching along live with us. It is 9:01 this morning, Pacific Standard Time. And if you are watching along after the fact but would still like to reach out to us, feel free to use our email that is live@lbaop.org. So again, a couple of ways for you to get involved with us this morning, share any observations, and ask any questions you may have. So, today we have a very cool topic and a very cool animal that we are going to be talking about. But the first thing I would like us to do, since it is still kind of early in the morning, is I would like us to get warmed up using our scientist brains. Now, scientists do all sorts of different things, but the thing I'm going to ask you to start with this morning is to start by making some observations. So, a lot of scientific wonderings or things that people are curious about often start off by making observations. Now, you can also get a lot of your questions answered by also making observations. So, I want you to take a couple of moments to make some observations or take a look at some of the things you see going on here in this exhibit. Now, that can include anything like any of the animals, that could include any of the other features you see, whether that be things that look living, maybe things that don't look like they are living. And again, if you want to text those observations to us, you are more than welcome to do so at 562-286-1838. Now, what we are looking at right now is one of our live webcams we have here at the aquarium. So if I were to walk outside and take a look at this blue cavern habitat, I would be seeing the exact same, well, almost the exact same view, but a very similar view that all of you are seeing as well. Now, for some of you that are avid divers, or if you are familiar with Catalina Island, the name Blue Cavern may also be familiar to you as well. And that's because Blue Cavern is named after a dive site, so a popular place people can go snorkeling and diving off the coast of Catalina. And that is one of the Channel Islands we have in Southern California, and it's about 26 miles from Long Beach. Now, Blue Cavern is a very good representation of the type of habitats we have here in Southern California. Any guess as to what those types of habitats are? One of the things that makes them super, super unique is all of this green stuff you see growing right here. Are you familiar with those at all? They look very plant-like, but they grow underwater. And all that green stuff you are looking at is a type of algae called kelp. So kelp makes kelp forests, and kelp forests can be thought of almost like rainforests, just underwater. So there are all sorts of different animals living at the bottom section here, or the middle section, or even that top section over here. Now, kelp forests are home to a wide variety of different types of animals. We'll get all sorts of different types of fish, from small fish to really big ones like that giant sea bass you see over there. It's also home to all sorts of invertebrates or all those boneless animals. Think of things like sea urchins. You can find all sorts of sea stars there. And it's also home to a bunch of different types of mammals like seals, sea lions, and our topic for today, which is sea otters. So we are going to be focusing on sea otters. We're going to be focusing on what makes them unique and also their role in that habitat that we just took a look at, that kelp forest. So when you take a look at otters, or when you first think of otters, what are some things that kind of first come to mind? This is something we like to ask here at the aquarium whenever we are doing talks or presentations about our otters. We like to ask what your kind of initial thoughts are or impressions of them are. Because a lot of people often say they look very cute, they look very cuddly, and some of the things that they notice right away on them are all that fur they have. That usually adds to that kind of cuteness factor as well. Now, otters, I'd have to agree, they are pretty cute. but they also have a lot of very unique adaptations or things that make them very special as an animal. And we're going to get into that, but the first thing I would like us to do before we get into otters being super special is I kind of want to take a step back and talk about what kind of animals they are. So they are related to seals, sea lions, and things like whales and dolphins, although not as closely related to those. The things that they are a little more closely related to are things like wolverines and badgers, but they're definitely still in that bigger kind of category. Now, they also have things in common that we as humans possess, and so we have traits that are similar to these animals right here. And that's because we and seals, sea lions, dogs, cats, also whales and dolphins are all a type of animal called mammals. And there are five things, well, some more too, but five unique things that all mammals have that really kind of makes them similar. And if we go over to my document camera, thank you, we'll be able to kind of write out what makes mammals mammals. So one of the things that we use to remember it is kind of using this little word right here, and then we'll write a trait across. And that's a little easier kind of way for us to remember it because the first thing we have to think of is whale, and then we'll be able to fill in some more of the things from there. So one of the first things that makes mammals unique, and one of the reasons why otters have all that fur or hair on their body, is to keep themselves nice and warm because we as mammals are warm blooded. And one of the ways you can test that out is if you put the back of your hand on your forehead and you just kind of do a quick temperature check to see whether or not that's kind of warm or cold. And most of the time, hopefully, it'll be sort of on the warmer side. And that's because we are warm blooded, so we're different than things like snakes. We're different than things like lizards who much prefer to go lay in the sun to get nice and warm. Now, something else that I already just kind of mentioned, but all mammals will have some sort of hair or fur on their bodies. Now, we have hair all over our bodies. We have it on our heads, we have it on our arms and our legs, and that's to better protect our bodies and to also keep for our heads to keep that a little warm as well. Now, the next little category that we are going to be talking about is one that marine mammals, like seals, sea lions, otters, ones that they really, really have to consider. And that is the fact that all mammals breathe air. So we as humans have different abilities to hold our breath. Sometimes there are humans that train a lot to be able to hold their breath for minutes at a time, sometimes even longer periods. And different marine mammals will also have different lengths in which they are or that they are able to hold their breath. Some marine mammals, like the sperm whale, can hold their breath for up to an hour, sometimes maybe an hour and a half when they are diving to look for squid in really deep canyons. Now, another part of being a mammal is that all mammals give live birth. Well, there are a couple of exceptions, the platypus and the echidna, but most mammals give live birth. So what that means is that you did not hatch from an egg. Instead, when you were born, you were probably crying a little bit, but you were breathing air right away. You were definitely doing your thing and not hatching from an egg. And then the last part of being a mammal is that when we were first born, we all eat or drink milk. And the reason we say also eating milk is because with some marine mammals, especially like much larger whales, their milk is kind of a pudding consistency. It is super high in fat because whales gain a lot of body mass and a lot of weight as they are growing. So their milk is a lot fattier, thus making it more like pudding, and you can't really drink pudding too well. So that's what it means to be a mammal. They are warm blooded, they have hair or fur, they breathe air, they give live birth, and they also eat and or drink milk. So I want us to keep that in mind when we are talking about what makes an otter unique because they will have very special adaptations in order to sort of check all of these boxes in order to make them a mammal. So the first adaptation I would like us to look at is some of their teeth. So I know we have a video of an otter opening their mouth. I also think we may have a video of some otters eating. And those will be really good examples to look at. And we can also take a look at one of our otter jaws after we look at those too. But With otters, like I mentioned, they are more closely related to wolverines and badgers. So sometimes when you think about those animals, you think about them as being maybe a little feisty, maybe a little ferocious. And these sea otters can definitely have those abilities in them as well. What's really unique about otters, and also one of the reasons that we always want to be really careful when we are working with them, is because they have really big teeth. And the reason why they have really big teeth is because sea otters really, really like to eat things that have hard shells on them. And one of their favorite foods that they like to eat are these small little spiky balls called sea urchins. Ooh, perfect. Thank you for pulling that up. Now, when you take a look at a sea urchin, do you think that it's an animal you can just pick up and start eating right away? And like even for you as humans to be able to pick that up, that's still very unique because if we think about a lot of animals in the ocean, they may not have the same hands as we do or the same ability to kind of pick that up. Now, also with the urchins, they have all of those spines along their body. And if we think about urchins and some other animals that like to spend a lot of time on the bottom of the ocean floor, they may not be super fast. So they may not be able to get away from predators really quickly. So instead of being able to maybe swim fast or maybe camouflage, they'll usually have other adaptations like maybe being spiky, maybe having a hard shell on them that makes them a little bit more difficult to eat. So that's why it's really, really hard for different types of animals to be able to eat sea urchins. But otters have those really special teeth that allow them to break into them. Now, sea urchins are actually another really unique animal in the kelp forest, and that's because they really like to eat kelp or that green stuff that you see down there. Now, because it's really hard for other animals to eat sea urchins, when we have too many sea urchins in areas, they can totally eat through all of the kelp and create these really kind of empty areas known as urchin barrens, where there's no more seaweed, no more kelp, just a whole bunch of those urchins. And that's why animals like otters and also there's a type of fish called the California sheephead are really important in keeping those really nice balances that we need. Okay, as promised, I have a otter skull that we can take a closer look at. So if we go back over to our document camera, thank you. Here is the kind of bottom section right here. And let me go ahead and show you from this side view too. Because one of the things I really want us to take a look at are these really big kind of canines here on the otter. So that's what will allow them to kind of break off the spines of the urchin. And they also have these really, really big molars right here as well that will also help them break off the spines and then get into the inside of an urchin. Because they have almost like a shell on the inside too that I can look at in just a second. So that's what they look like from the front view. You can see super, super long teeth and not a view that we get to see on otters too often. And the reason why they need those teeth just like that is because, like I mentioned, they are getting into these sea urchins. Now, what's really cool about this is it was a model that was made here out of some clay and also some toothpicks. But it really does give us a good representation of what sea urchins are like because, truthfully, they are kind of like a bunch of toothpicks. Maybe a little bit more brittle, maybe more sharp as well, but it's basically like a small little ball with a bunch of toothpicks coming out of it. Now, on the inside of the sea urchin, they have what is called a sea urchin test. So it's almost like a small little shell, and all those little holes you see or circles right there are where all the spikes grow out of. So not only do they have all those spikes, but they will have almost like the shell right there. So a couple of different layers that otters have to get through in order to eat them. So having those teeth makes them really unique and also one of the only animals that are able to eat the sea urchins. And sometimes we call animals that are really unique with a special role keystone species. And I can touch on that a little bit more later as well. Okay, so teeth make these animals super interesting, but what something else is very cool about them is their little paws and their pockets that they have. So sea otters are what we call really dexterous. They are super good with their hands or their paws. Now, that's something that I would say is unique to maybe us as humans, also unique to monkeys and other primates, but that's something that makes otters really special too. So you can see right here, the otter's doing a really good job of kind of getting the shell off the shrimp, as well as eating it. So it's using its paws in combination with its nice little sharp teeth it has to kind of de-shell that shrimp to get closer to it. So not only will they use their paws, but they also have almost like armpit pockets. So kind of like where the armpits would be on us, sea otters have really loose flaps of skin that they are able to store kind of urchins and other shelled items in. Now, the reason they need to be able to store those items and also have really good grippy paws is because otters are one of the few mammals that are known to use tools. So, what that means is they will grab something like a rock or a shell. They'll maybe store it in one of their armpit pockets, or maybe they'll just hold onto it. And they will go back up to the surface, lay on their back, and then break off the spines to break into the test and get to the urchin. So that's something that's really unique is they will be using those little tools to help aid them. And something else that's really funny here at the aquarium is that sometimes in the galleries you can hear like a banging or a clacking sound, and that's just some of our otters banging their toys up against the wall. Now, you can also hear them sometimes in their back area when they give them different shells and clams, and they will be making a lot of commotion. So it's always really funny to hear that with our otters. Now, I also think we do have a video of them using their armpit pockets. I think it's one of their enrichment videos, which is also another really cool term as well. So, here at the aquarium, we do have several otters under our care. And because they are super smart, super curious creatures, one of the things our animal care team likes to do very often is give them enrichment. Those are things such as toys, different treats, maybe puzzles, things to always keep their minds learning and always super active. And that also kind of benefits the animal care team on that end too, because it keeps the otter from maybe using their curiosity for mischievous ways, which they also can be known to do as well. Okay, so here we see one of our older otters grabbing some of those enrichment items. Those can be little frozen, maybe like clam treats, seafood treats, and then she put them in her little armpit pockets and ran off. Now, the reason I said this is also one of our older otters is because with the otters, just kind of like us as humans, when they get older in age, they get more kind of white or lighter fur around their heads. So that is known as grizzle, and it's kind of the same idea as when we get a little older and get maybe grays or lighter hairs. So I'm not too sure exactly which otter this is, but I do know it's one of our older ones. So that's just something I think is very cute. Not all the time you can see them using their little armpit pockets, but if you look closely, then you'll be able to notice it a little more because they are super, super quick with it. Now, something else we can also see very well here on the otters is all that fur. Now, right now they look really wet, so you may not be able to see all those different individual strands of fur. But something else that makes them super, super unique is how incredibly dense their fur is. Now, these animals don't have any blubber like how other marine mammals do. So they don't have that really nice fatty layer that keeps them warm. Now, these specific otters that we have here at the aquarium are southern sea otters. So those are ones that historically could have been found from areas like Mexico all the way up to Alaska. Right now, their current range is about the Monterey Bay area, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is later. But the water that they live in is relatively chilly. Even here in Southern California, our air temp can be like in the 90s, in the hundreds, but our water temperature will always be kind of in the 60s. And that's because there is a current up in Alaska that pushes cold water all the way down the coast. So that's why we have cold water year round. But for our otters, that means they have to have really, really dense fur instead of having that blubber to help keep them nice and warm. So this is a very, very good example because not only is it super cute, but it is showing just how fluffy our baby otters are when they are first born. Now, the reason why it's unique to them as babies is because they are actually so fluffy when they are first born. They also are babies, but they don't really know how to swim too well. So they can't really swim down to the bottom of any kelp forest areas because there is too much air trapped in their fur, making them too buoyant, and they just swim right back up to the surface. Well, I guess float right back up to the surface. So it's really important that they have adults or parents with them there to make sure that they are helping them eat and also eventually teaching them how to be an otter. Now, If we go back over to my document camera, we have some otter fur that I would like for us to take a close look at. So, one of the things, like I said, that makes it really unique is it is incredibly dense. So, one of the things we like to show is even when you are kind of going through the otter fur like this, trying to see if you can find the bottom of it, you really can't. And that really helps them store all sorts of air in there because they don't want too much air, but they do want a little bit because they don't have that blubbery layer. So instead, their fur is keeping them nice and warm, and they're going to want to trap air really close to their body to act almost like a dry suit. Now, a dry suit is a type of suit that is used when scuba diving, but it's kind of the opposite of a wetsuit. So it's really helpful in super cold areas. But basically, instead of letting water in around your body, you have a really thin layer of air that your body heat will heat up for you, keeping like a nice little protective layer without getting you super cold. So that's exactly how otter fur works as well. Now, sometimes when you see otters swimming around in our exhibits, or honestly anywhere where you can see them swimming and kind of diving down, oftentimes you will see a trail of air bubbles coming up out of them as well. And then something else with otters is because their fur is what keeps them nice and warm, they spend a lot of time grooming their fur as well. And I think we do have some videos of them grooming their fur. Now, this is a behavior that you will see them doing often in an aquarium setting and oftentimes out in their natural habitat too. Now, the difference between doing it in an aquarium setting and out in their natural habitat is they don't really have any natural predators in the aquarium setting. So, oftentimes, what you'll see them doing out in their natural habitat is sometimes they'll maybe find more shallow areas like this. Maybe they will wrap themselves up in kelp so they don't float away. And they will do that sometimes with their babies too to make sure they don't get taken by predators or maybe make sure they don't end up floating away in a storm or something. Now, I think this video is one, absolutely precious, but two, shows us some really cool things and really cool otter behaviors. So like I mentioned, right now we see it grooming its fur. It also looks like it's giving itself a little bit of a head massage. Very, very long day at the otter factory for this one. But something else that we see them doing is another behavior where they lay on their back. So that nice belly area they have is a really good surface for them. So a lot of times when they are trying to crack stuff open, when they are maybe holding a baby, you will see them laying and floating on their backs just like that. And like I mentioned, sometimes they wrap themselves up in kelp if they are able to find that, utilizing that top kind of canopy layer. Now, I do have two little plushies right here that will show just how the otters like to lay on their back, kind of like this one. Now, they don't really eat sea stars that much. I don't know why this one's holding a sea star, but they will hold their babies just like this as well. And this is actually a scene that we sometimes kind of get to see here at the aquarium. And the reason why is because we, as an aquarium, are a part of a very cool program called a sea otter surrogacy program. So, what that means is when any baby otters get orphaned or abandoned, they don't really know what they're doing. So we or Monterey Bay will take them in and they will get paired with a mama otter who will then teach them everything they need to know about being a baby otter, how to find food, how to groom themselves, how to dive, and basically make sure that they will grow up to be an otter that is healthy and can contribute to those kelp forest ecosystems. So, our goal is to make sure we have this happening. And if it's not happening out in their natural habitat for whatever reason, we can make sure it happens here in an aquarium setting. And usually this happens after maybe there's a big storm, maybe there's a predation event, but it's whenever baby otters are found abandoned, then they'll be taken in by an institution like us or maybe Monterey Bay Aquarium. So, because of that, here in our facility, we will have several otters that are on exhibit, and those ones will go to different zoos or aquariums. But then we'll also have a holding area kind of off out of public view, and that's where we will be having our otters raising the other ones. Now, the reason we have that specific section out of public view is because we want these otters to remain as wild as possible. In a couple of videos ago, you might have seen the otters grabbing some enrichment items while also seeing some other staff members on exhibit. Now, those ones have a relationship with them. They have different training and commands that they know. The humans are still very careful when interacting with them, but those otters are a little more desensitized. They definitely don't see humans as scary. Now, with the otters that are being re released out into their natural habitat, we want them to be super wild. We don't want them to rely on humans or associate them for food at all. So that's why we try to limit human interaction as much as possible. Now, this is actually a picture from one of our holding areas in the back, and you can see one of the baby otters holding on to some artificial kelp. So it already looks like the mama was teaching it how to hold on to stuff to make sure it doesn't end up floating away. Now, the reason why we have holding areas like this, and the reason why places like us or Monterey Bay Aquarium put so much emphasis on taking care of these otters, is because since they are one of the few animals that can eat sea urchins, they play a really important role in making sure there's enough kelp for all those other animals to enjoy. Otters eat the sea urchins, and the sea urchins eat the kelp. So, by making sure there's not too many sea urchins, they are protecting the kelp and making a bunch of homes for all sorts of different animals to live in. Now, not only do animals benefit, but we as humans also benefit because we get a lot of seafood